Yo, what's up guys? It's Noah here, and in today's video, we're going to be breaking down the NBA slate on Draftkings for Tuesday, November the 14th. We do have 10 games tonight, so it's a relatively big slate. I am going to try and go quick, give you guys a quick game-by-game breakdown of Tuesday's 10-game slate. What I do like, taking a first look at this slate on Monday night. But as always, guys, before we do get started with the breakdown, if you guys do enjoy these DFS videos, and if they do help you out, make sure you hit that like button down below. Hit that subscribe button if you have not yet. And if you are new to the channel and if you don't have an account over on PrizePicks, we are partnered up with PrizePicks. You guys can check them out, linked down below in the description, or just when you sign up for PrizePicks, make sure to use promo code NOAH. You will get your first deposit matched up to $100 when you sign up for PrizePicks with my promo code. And if you don't know what PrizePicks is, they are a player prop site. They're a DFS pick'em site focused on player props and player projections. So it's really simple. On PrizePicks, you're just picking more or less on a player's projection. You have to make at least 2 picks, but you can make up to 6 picks on PrizePicks, and you can win up to 25x your money. So if you guys want to check them out, if you want to take a look at all the props they have available for Tuesday's NBA slate, you can see all that's available right now. Obviously, as we get closer to the start of the games on Tuesday night, there will be even more props available. But yeah, if there's anything that stands out to you, just take more or less on a player's projection. That's simple. But yeah, if you guys don't have an account on PrizePicks, use that promo code NOAH. You will get your first deposit matched up to $100. So be sure to check out PrizePicks. If you guys don't have an account over there, make sure you use that code and you get a deposit bonus when you sign up. But let's go ahead and talk through Tuesday's 10-game slate. We'll start off with the first game of the night, Miami and Charlotte. We'll start off on the Miami side. So for Miami, Kyle Lowry was out last game for rest, but he is expected back for this game. So with Lowry back, we can kind of look to the main guys for Miami here. They still don't have Tyler Hero. Hero's going to be out for a while, so you're going to see a really big role for Bam, really big role for Jimmy Butler. This is a really good matchup against Charlotte. Charlotte does play fast. They're not the best defensive team. I think it's a pretty good spot for both Bam and Butler. Their price tags, though, at $9K and $8,600, I don't think make them like standout plays on this slate. But if you are playing, multiple lineups, I think it makes some exposure to get, or makes some sense to get exposure to both Bam and Butler here. I do prefer Bam. Bam has just had like a really good season. He's shown a lot of upside for fantasy this year, averaging almost 47 DraftKings points per game. And we know Charlotte has struggled against bigs. They've always been a team that's struggled defensively against centers. So I think Bam's my favorite of all the Miami guys. But I do want to talk about some of these cheap guys. So Duncan Robinson did start last game and play 39 minutes. I'm assuming Duncan Robinson is going to start moving forward. And if that's the case, at 5,400, I think he's a playable option on this slate. Now, Duncan Robinson he's a scoring-dependent player. He's not a guy that's really going to do much besides shoot threes. But if he gets hot from the field, there is kind of an upside for Duncan. I don't mind going to him at 5,400. But Josh Richardson, he started last game. He'll go back to the bench now that Lowry's back. Haywood Highsmith has been starting, but hasn't really shown much upside. I don't think I really want to play Haywood Highsmith on this slate. But if he does start again, I think he's an okay value play. But that's probably it for Miami. Nothing else really stands out here. Now on the other side with Charlotte. So for Charlotte, we know there's no Terry Rozier. Gordon Hayward and Brandon Miller are both probable, so they're expected to play. LaMelo Ball is obviously going to have a huge role without Terry Rozier. His minutes have been pretty high as well. He's going to play big minutes as long as this game's competitive. It's just not the greatest spot, though, against Miami, a pretty good defensive team, a team that also kind of plays at a slow pace. So I'm not super interested in LaMelo here. I think he's a little bit overpriced. Gordon Hayward at 7,400, I think you can kind of say the same thing. He's had a big role without Terry Rozier, but the price tag is 7,400, doesn't make him a standout play. Same with P.J. Washington and Mark Williams. I mean, there's really not much I like on Charlotte today. I think most of my interest in this game is coming on the Miami side. Charlotte, I'm probably going to be passing on this 10-game slate. So let's move on to the next game, Indiana and Philadelphia. So we did just see these teams play a couple days ago, playing again today. Start off on the Pacers side. If we're looking to any Pacers on this slate, I think we're probably going to be looking at Tyrese Halliburton, to Miles Turner. Don't know if I'm going to get to much else on Indiana. Halliburton at 10,200 is always in play for GBPs. He did have a really good game against the Sixers team. Last time they played, it was a really high-scoring game. Halliburton played 36 minutes, had a double-double, 25 points, 17 assists. I mean, he's been great for fantasy this year. The price tag, though, at 10,200, I don't think makes Halliburton a standout play today. I think he's just more of kind of like a contrarian GBP option. And the Miles Turner does feel a little underpriced at 6,900. The only thing I worry about with Miles Turner here is that it's a really tough matchup against Joel Embiid. It's also a spot where Turner could deal with foul trouble. But I think a lot of people are going to realize that, and a lot of people are probably going to shy away from Miles Turner today. So in tournaments, you should get him at low ownership. I think Miles Turner does make some sense as a GPP play. We know that when he gets 30 plus minutes, there's a big ceiling for Miles Turner. And although this isn't the greatest matchup, the upside's definitely there, especially at this price tag. So he might be my favorite play from the Pacers when you factor in price. But like Buddy Hield and Bruce Brown, Benedict Mathurin, I'm just going to pass on the rest of these Pacers on a 10-game slate. Now let's move on to the other side with Philadelphia. So we got really big news to monitor with the Sixers. Joel Embiid listed as questionable for today. Embiid hasn't missed a game yet this season. Maybe they sit him out here. We'll have to see. If Embiid plays, this is a fantastic matchup for him against the Pacers. We saw him crush the Pacers when they just played 68 DraftKings points in 33 minutes. Really, there's nothing negative you can say about Embiid here. He is kind of expensive, but he's worth the price tag, I think, in this spot. The only issue is that right now there's not a ton of value on the slate, but if value does open up, I think Embiid is someone that I would want to try and pay up for today, assuming he plays. Now, if Embiid doesn't play, I mean, that's obviously a benefit to everyone. Tyrese Maxey benefits, Tobias Harris benefits, D'Anthony Melton benefits, and then Paul Reed would probably be the guy that you would see start in place of Embiid. Paul Reed would by far be the best value play on the slate if he winds up starting. But for now, I'm just going to assume that Embiid is playing. And then Tyrese Maxey and Tobias Harris, they're both in a really good spot as well. We did see Tyrese Maxey put up 50 against this Pacers team, 50 points, 74 DraftKings points. Maxey has shown a really big ceiling this year. He's playing a ton of minutes every night. He's taking a ton of shots as well. It feels weird paying almost $9K for Tyrese Maxey. This is not a guy that we typically have ever paid this much for on DraftKings, but man, he's been so good this season. The role's been great. The matchup's fantastic here. I don't hate going to Maxey and GBPs. I think his ownership will be a bit low just because, it is such a high price tag, but man, the upside's definitely there in this spot. Tobias Harris obviously doesn't have as big of an upside as Maxey does, but he does give you a solid floor. It's a good matchup. He's going to play a lot of minutes. Definitely don't mind Tobias Harris at 6,400. And then D'Anthony Melton at 5,500. I'll probably pass on unless Embiid gets ruled out. Then I think Melton will become viable. And that's really it for the Sixers. Nothing else really stands out here. Do want to mention that Nicholas Batum is out, and he had been starting. So we'll have to see what the Sixers do with the starting lineup without Batum. I'm guessing it'll be Robert Covington that starts in place of Batum. And if Covington does start, I mean, Covington has never been a great fantasy producer, but he is really cheap. I would assume if he's starting, he plays like 25 minutes, so he'll be a source of salary relief on the slate. If you do want to go to Covington, that's assuming he starts in place of Batum. If they decide to start somebody else, whether it be like Patrick Beverley or I don't know, Springer, Korkmaz, like whoever starts for Batum, I think would be a playable value. Depending who it is, I assume it'll be Covington, which I think at 3,400 puts Covington in play. But that'll do it for that game. Let's move on to the next game, Atlanta and Detroit. So some more big injury news to monitor for Atlanta. Trae Young listed as questionable for today with personal reasons. So if Trae Young gets ruled out, I mean, we know the biggest beneficiary by far is going to be DeJounte Murray. DeJounte Murray has had some really big games in the past whenever Trae Young has missed. Murray would be a really, really good play here at 8,300 and a pretty solid matchup against Detroit if Trae is out. Now, if Trae plays, then I think you could look to Trae at 9,200. Like if I was going to pay up for anyone, or if I was going to play anyone on Atlanta today, I think Trae would be my favorite option if he plays. Don't mind the spot for him at all against Detroit. I think it's a matchup he can definitely have success in. The price tag's not too high. We haven't seen like a massive ceiling from Trae outside of that one game against Orlando. He's kind of just been like in the 48, 50 drafting point range. But I think this is a matchup where you definitely could get a ceiling game from Trae. And the rest of Atlanta guys, so like Jalen Johnson has been starting. Minutes have been a little volatile, but he has been a good per-minute producer this season. The price tag, though, is 6,200. Doesn't make him stand out on the slate. I still think he's playable, though. I do want to talk about Clint Capella. So at 5,600, Clint Capella looks a little underpriced here. The Pistons are going to be without Jalen Duren today, so I definitely think that makes it a better matchup for Capella. He'll get to go up against Marvin Bagley, who is a pretty weak defender. The only issue with Capella is that he just doesn't play a ton of minutes. He's going to like top out at 28 minutes. Like it's pretty unlikely you're going to get over 30 minutes from Capella unless like Onyeka Okongwu gets in foul trouble or something. But if Capella plays like 28 minutes here against the Pistons without Duren, I mean, at 5,600, he could definitely be viable today. I don't mind going to him. And then obviously if Trae does sit, that helps DeJounte Murray a ton, but it would also benefit guys like Bogdan. I think Bogdan would be a pretty good value play at 4,900 if Trae's out. I don't know who would start in place of Trae. Probably would be Sadiq Bey, and they would just put him back in the starting lineup. So like maybe you could go there for value at 4,300. But that's it for Atlanta. Obviously, the trade news is kind of massive, and we'll just kind of have to keep an eye on that. Let's move on to the Detroit side, though. So, as we mentioned, Detroit going to be without Jalen Duren today. Without Jalen Duren, I'm assuming we'll see Marvin Bagley start at center. Bagley has started the games that Duren has been out this season. So, if Bagley starts at only 5K, he's going to be a pretty good value play today. Bagley has had, I think he started twice this season in those 2 starts. One of the starts he did okay. The other start he was kind of mediocre. The price tag's not like super cheap on Bagley, so I don't think he's just like this slam dunk free square value. But he definitely is playable here. If he gets anywhere near 30 minutes, he's typically a guy that can produce at a pretty good rate. He typically will average around a fantasy point per minute. I think the matchup's solid. At 5K, I do like Bagley today. He's probably my favorite play on the Pistons. But I don't mind going to Cade Cunningham or Azar Thompson either. I think this matchup's pretty good. I think this game environment's going to be pretty good. So Cade, we know he's going to have a massive role. The ball's going to be in his hands a ton. He's going to play huge minutes. At 8K, I'm fine going to Cade today in GBPs. And then Azar Thompson, he's just been playing a ton of minutes as well this season. Been stuffing the stat sheet, rebounding a ton. I mean, you look at the rebounds lately, 15, 13, 16 rebounds. He's a guy that can get defensive stats as well. At 7,100, I still think he's playable at that price tag, especially in a matchup like this. But that's probably it for Detroit. I don't see myself going to Isaiah Stewart at his price tag, even with Durant out. Sasser, Hayes, they're expensive enough to where I don't want to go there, especially now that Ivy and Burks are back. So that'll do it for Detroit. Let's move on to the next game, Orlando and Brooklyn. So for Orlando, no Wendell Carter Jr., no Markelle Fultz. Our DraftKings has already adjusted the price tags for these injuries, but without Wendell Carter Jr., you should continue to see Goga start at center. Without Markelle Fultz, you should continue to see Anthony Black start. If we're going to be looking to any Orlando guys today, I think Paolo and Franz are both fine. I don't really love either one of their price tags, but they're playable on this slate. Jalen Suggs has had some good games lately, and I think his role should continue to be solid while Markelle Fultz is out. But he's almost 6K now. I think at almost 6K, I'm fine passing on Jalen Suggs today. Cole Anthony at 5,700 should have a pretty solid role off the bench. But at 5,700, again, you're not really getting much of a discount on him. Goga might be my favorite play from Orlando. Now, in the games he has started, the minutes have not been super high for Goga, but he'll probably play 22 to 26 minutes, and he is typically a solid per-minute producer. The matchup here against Brooklyn, I think, is fine. So, I guess Goga's playable, but I really don't like a ton from Orlando today. I mean, there's not a ton that sticks out here. Anthony Black, again, he has been starting in place of Markelle Fultz, but he's a pretty low-usage guy, a guy that doesn't produce much when he's on the floor. Even though he's starting, I don't think that really makes him, much. That doesn't give him much value, especially now that he's 4,400. I think if he was 3K, it'd be a different story. But at 4,400, I'm fine passing on Anthony Black. So yeah, that's it for Orlando. Not much really stands out on Orlando today. On the Brooklyn side, Brooklyn, they're still shorthanded. No Cam Thomas, no Ben Simmons. And then I think Lonnie Walker is questionable as well. Yeah, he's questionable. Obviously, Mikal Bridges is going to have a really big role here without Cam Thomas and without Ben Simmons. Last game without Cam Thomas and Ben Simmons was pretty good against Washington. The game before that against Boston was really, was not great, but that was also a massive blowout. I know the Nets, I want to say the Nets have been involved in a good amount of blowouts this season. But Mikal, he's going to have a big role here. He's going to play a lot of minutes. I think the matchup's fine. I don't mind going to Mikal today, but I think he is kind of priced appropriately here. And Spencer Dinwiddie, been a frustrating player lately. It's just even without Cam Thomas and Ben Simmons, I mean, Dinwiddie still has just done nothing. And the price tag is not that cheap either. I mean, you're kind of paying the premium for Dinwiddie right now. I would expect Dinwiddie to kind of, I would expect him to step up and to have better games moving forward while Thomas and Simmons are out. But do I want to pay almost 7K for Dinwiddie today? Probably not. I'm fine passing on him. Claxton, he made his return last game against Washington, played 28 minutes, had 38 DraftKings points, was really productive. I assume he'll play more than 28 minutes here. I assume maybe 30, 32. So if we're going to get more than 28 minutes from Claxton, I don't mind going to Claxton at 6,200. He might be my favorite play on Brooklyn if I had to play anyone on this team. The rest of these guys, like Lonnie Walker, DFS, Cam Johnson, I'll pass on these guys at their price tags. I think that's pretty much it for Brooklyn. So let's move on to the next game, San Antonio and OKC. This one should be a fun one. Two teams that do play relatively fast. On San Antonio, we do have some injuries to monitor here. So Keldon Johnson is questionable. I believe Jeremy Sohan's questionable as well. And I think Trey Jones is probable. No, he's also questionable. So all three of these guys are questionable, Keldon, Sohan, and Trey Jones. Don't know what the Spurs will do with the starting lineup if Keldon and Sohan are both out. I assume Malachi Branham would probably start, and then after that, like I don't know who the other starter would be if both those guys are out. Maybe they would start like Cedi Osman. We'll have to see what the Spurs do with their starting lineup if these guys sit. If they do sit, I think there is going to be some value to go to here, especially if a guy like Cedi Osman does start. I would like him for value. If Malachi Branham starts, I think he would be playable. For now, let's just assume that everyone is in for San Antonio, and if that's the case, I mean, Victor Wembanyama, I already kind of have interest in today, even if Keldon and all these guys play. But obviously, if Keldon sits, if Sohan sits, that's even better for Wemby. Just gives him kind of a bigger role, more secure minutes. And if you look at the minutes lately for Wemby, they've started to tick up. 35 minutes against Minnesota, 34 minutes against Miami. We saw at the beginning of the season, Wemby was only playing like 28, 30 minutes. Well, now he's starting to get into like the mid 30s, into the upper 30s. And if Wemby's going to be playing 35, 36 minutes, we know this is a player that can really stuff the stat sheet, that can produce when he's on the floor. I think it's a good matchup against OKC. I think it's going to be a fast-paced game. You'll have Wemby and Chet going up against each other. Like, this is going to be a fun game to watch, I think. I definitely like Wemby on this slate at 8,600. I like him as a pay-up option today. And then if Keldon plays at 6,700, I'll probably pass on him. Zach Collins at 6,400, I don't mind. He'll get 30, 32 minutes as their starting center. He's been a relatively productive player this season. Not a guy that has like a massive ceiling, but I think the floor is pretty solid. I think the matchup's okay. Don't mind going to Zach Collins here. Devin Vassell is fine. He's been limited, or he was being limited since he came back from his injury. But the last 2 games, he's gotten back to full minutes. At 6,300, I don't mind going to Devin Vassell. I think he's probably my second favorite play on San Antonio behind Wemby. And then Sohan, if he plays, I'll pass on him. The rest of the Spurs, I'll pass on, but there could be value to go to here if these guys are out. And I think depending on what their starting lineup looks like, there definitely could be some value from San Antonio. I would like Malachi Branham a good amount if he starts. He's super cheap, and I would like Cedi Osman quite a bit as well. If he starts, he's also super cheap. But that's it for San Antonio. Moving on to the other side of this game with OKC. So for OKC today, you got SGA coming in at 10,300. I definitely like SGA as a pay-up option here. I think this is a good matchup against San Antonio. San Antonio last season was a really good matchup for point guards. I think that's going to be the same again this season. And even playing with, Chet and Jalen Williams and Lou Dort, like SGA has still had a huge role this year, playing huge minutes, dominating usage. There's nothing really negative you can say about SGA. I mean, the dude's just crushing every night, it seems like. I'm fine paying up for him on this slate. I don't mind going to Chet either at 7,600. But after SGA and Chet, there's really nothing else I like on OKC. Giddey has been really disappointing this season. Jalen Williams has been okay, but I think at 6,200, he's priced where he should be. Lou Dort, again, feels priced about right. I definitely think 2 favorite plays on OKC are for sure SGA and Chet. But that'll do it for that game. Let's move on to the next game, Dallas and the Pelicans. So for Dallas today, when it comes to this Dallas team, I typically just only really play Luka and Kyrie unless, there's some injuries or something. Maxi Kleber's out right now, but I don't think that's like a super impactful injury. I don't think that's really going to open up any value. Luka is, going to be one of the top pay-up options pretty much every slate he's on. On this slate, you have to decide between like Luka and Jokic and Joel Embiid. There's a good amount of pay-up options to go to today. Luka is definitely in play. I don't have an issue going up to Luka. I think I would prefer Joel Embiid for a little bit cheaper, and I think I would prefer getting up to Jokic, who we'll talk about. But Luka, firmly in play, definitely can go there. Kyrie at 8,700, I'll probably pass on. Kyrie's definitely been underperforming from a fantasy perspective this season. He's had some good games lately, though. Maybe this is, maybe he'll start to produce at the same level moving forward. But at 8,700 on a 10-game slate, I'll probably pass on Kyrie today. The rest of the Mavericks, I just don't get excited about anyone else here. A lot of low-usage guys, a lot of guys that just don't really produce at a high enough rate to be worth rostering. They're all kind of priced where they should be. So for the Mavericks, I think it's Luka. That's pretty much it for me. And on the Pelicans, no CJ McCollum still. Herb Jones is questionable, so we'll have to monitor Herb Jones' status. If Herb Jones is out, I'd assume that Dyson Daniels would start. Lately, they had been going with Dyson Daniels. But I guess you could see... I assume it would be Dyson Daniels. I guess they could go with like Matt Ryan or something, but I think it's been Dyson Daniels starting lately. So if Herb Jones is out, I think that does help Dyson Daniels. That would put him in the starting lineup, but he is priced at 5,300, so it's not like we're getting a ton of value there. But Dyson Daniels has been good lately in the games he has started. He's been relatively productive. He would be playable if Herb Jones is out. Jordan Hawkins has been priced up a good amount for CJ to be out. I think at his price tag, I'm probably fine passing on him. Obviously, without CJ, you're going to see a lot of opportunity for both Zion and Brandon Ingram. where these two guys are priced at, I don't think either one stand out as like core options today, but you could definitely go there in GBPs. I think Zion is still the guy that I prefer just because I think Zion has the bigger ceiling. The only issue with Zion this season is that he's just been really inconsistent. He did have a big game against Denver, but other than that, he's kind of been underwhelming this year. I don't mind this matchup, though, against Dallas. I know Dallas has struggled defending the paint this year, and that's where Zion can do a lot of his damage. So I think the matchup's pretty good for Zion here. I like him at 8,500 in GBPs. Brandon Ingram is fine as well. It's a good matchup for J-Val. It's just that, the minutes, man, you never know with J-Val. But, like, you look at last game, he put up 39 Draftkings points, and he only played 21 minutes. Like, if you told me J-Val was going to get 30 minutes today, I would love him at 6,300, but I just don't think that's going to happen. I think more times than not, you're going to see like 22, 24 minutes for J-Val, which he can still get there in 22, 24 minutes. It's just, it's just not a guy that I really want to play at his price tag if he's only going to get that, those minutes. And that's really it for the Pelicans. Nothing else stands out here. So let's move on to the next game, Portland and Utah. So Portland, they're another shorthanded team right now. No Malcolm Brogdon, no Scoot, no Robert Williams, obviously no Anthony Simons either. Skylar Mays has been the guy that's really been benefiting without Brogdon lately. Skylar Mays has been priced up to 6,700, but kind of for good reason. He's been producing at a really high rate lately, averaging over a fantasy point per minute, and he's been playing huge minutes. 37 minutes against Sacramento, 33 minutes against the Lakers. I assume he continues to start. I assume he continues to play big minutes. He's been a productive player when he's gotten minutes, so I don't mind going to Skylar Mays here, even at almost 7K. It feels weird paying almost 7K for Skylar Mays, but I think he might be my favorite play on Portland. Shaedon Sharpe's going to play a huge amount of minutes as well. I mean, he's getting like over 40 minutes a night. I mean, he's played over 40 minutes in 5 straight games, which is just absurd. Hopefully the dude just doesn't run out of gas, but I'm assuming, as a young guy like he is, I guess he can handle playing 40 minutes a night. At 7,900, no issue going to Shaedon Sharpe. I mean, the guy, again, is playing 40 minutes a night. Jeremy Grant, though, at 7,500, I'll probably pass on. I know he's had some good games lately, like he had that really big game against Sacramento, but 7,500 feels like an appropriate price tag for him. I think it's a pretty good matchup for DeAndre Ayton. I don't mind going to him at 7K. He's probably my third favorite play on on Portland, followed by obviously Sharpe and Mays. And then Matisse Thybulle has gotten some minutes lately. I mean, he did play 34 against Sacramento, did play 20 last game. He had a really good game in only 20 minutes. Matisse Thybulle, though, is a very low usage player. He's a guy that doesn't really do much when he's on the floor besides, shoot threes and maybe rack up defensive stats. So it's really hard for him to put up much of a ceiling, although he has had 2 good games back-to-back. I'll probably pass on Matisse Thybulle here. I think if I'm going to anyone on Portland, I'm looking to Sharpe, Mays, and Ayton. I think those are my 3 favorite guys. But that'll do it for that side of the game. Now talking about Utah here. So for Utah, we got to monitor some injury news with John Collins. He's listed as probable. I assume he'll play, but just keep an eye on it. Without Walker Kessler, we have seen them playing kind of smaller lately. Utah's been playing John Collins at the 5, so I think John Collins is benefiting right now without Walker Kessler. Now, that really hasn't resulted in much fantasy production for John Collins because the 2 games lately without Kessler, he's not been great. But I think this matchup against Portland is a pretty good one for John Collins, so I don't mind him at 6,400 today. Lauri Markkanen, I think, is always a fine GBP play, but at almost 9K, I'll probably pass on Lauri Markkanen here. Jordan Clarkson has really had some big games lately. Last 2 games without Kessler, he's put up 45 and 42 Draftkings points. He's played a ton of minutes. I said this in my last video. I think taking Kessler out of the starting lineup, taking THT out of the starting lineup, and replacing them with Keontae George and Agbaji, 2 kind of lower usage players, I think that's really helped Jordan Clarkson, and we've seen that be the case the last 2 games. So in a matchup against Portland, a bad defensive team, I definitely think Jordan Clarkson's in play here at 6,500. And the Keontae George, he's been starting lately, and he's been pretty productive. He's been handling the ball a lot, racking up a lot of assists. The last 2 games he started, he's played 31 and 30 minutes, and he's put up 23 and 28 Draftkings points. His price tag continues to rise. He's up to 5,300 now. At 5,300, I don't think Keontae George is like a slam dunk value play or anything, but I think he's still viable. And then, the rest of these guys like THT coming off the bench, I'll pass on. Kelly Olynyk coming off the bench, I'll pass on. And even though Agbaji's been starting, that really hasn't resulted in much fantasy upside. He did have a really big game last game, but the game before that, he was really disappointing. Agbaji is typically a low-usage guy that doesn't really produce when he's on the floor, especially when he's playing with like all the other high-usage starters. He is super cheap, though, and right now there's not a ton of value on this slate, so I guess you could go to Agbaji. I don't really like playing this guy in DFS, when the team's fully healthy. But I guess he's playable just because right now there's not a ton of value. But if value does open up, I think he would definitely fall he would fall down the list for me. He wouldn't be like one of my top values or anything. But that's it for Utah. Let's move on to the next game. 3 more games to hit, guys. So Clippers and Nuggets. On the Clippers side today, I mean, this Clippers team, they're just so hard to really project right now with all these 4 guys, healthy: PG, Kawhi, Harden, and Westbrook. At their price tags, like, none of them look super appealing today. If I had to pick one, I still think Kawhi's my favorite at 8,200. But Kawhi has really been disappointing from a fantasy perspective ever since James Harden arrived. His fantasy upside has taken a big hit. Maybe Kawhi has a good game here, but at 8,200, I don't really like it a ton. I mean, Paul George did have a good game recently, but I'm not super interested in Paul George at that price tag. James Harden is a guy that we know has fantasy upside, but since he's been with the Clippers, I mean, he really hasn't shown it. Maybe this is the game that Harden pops off, but I'll probably pass on Harden here. And I think Westbrook also takes a big hit now that Harden's on the team. His upside definitely just isn't as high anymore. I mean, I don't really like any of these Clippers at their price tags. And then Zubac, I think Zubac kind of has more of an upside here now that there's no Mason Plumlee. And last time they did play the Nuggets, we actually did see Zubac get a lot of minutes. He did play, I want to say he played a decent amount of minutes. Did they? I could have swore the Clippers played the Nuggets earlier this season. Maybe I'm tripping. I must be tripping. But typically, I would think in this matchup against the Nuggets, like, you would want Zubac out there for size going up against Jokic. If Zubac does play like 30 minutes, I mean, he's got upside, but I mean, there's just nothing on the Clippers I want to play today. I mean, this is just a team I've kind of been avoiding in DFS lately, and I think I'm just going to avoid him again on this slate. Maybe one of these guys pops off and has a good game, but I'll just pass on him. So not a ton of interest in the Clippers. Now on the Nuggets side, I mean, Nikola Jokic, I mean, he just should continue to have a massive role while Jamal Murray is out. He's been great the last few games without Murray, just been unstoppable. Triple-double now in, 2 out of his last 3 games. 79, 69, 84, 69. Like, the dude's just putting up, like, 65 DraftKings points a game right now. He's super expensive at 12,200, but, like, it's hard not to like Jokic on any slate. It's just, there's not a ton of great value right now, but, man, if value opens up, Jokic is someone that I definitely want to try and pay up for. And the rest of the Nuggets, I mean, Aaron Gordon, MPJ should definitely continue to benefit without Jamal Murray, but they're almost 7K now, so I think at almost 7K, I'm fine passing on Gordon and MPJ. I still think they're playable, but neither one of them stand out as, like, priority plays today. And then Reggie Jackson, he's had some good games without Jamal Murray. He's had some bad games. He's kind of like a risky option, but I think there is some upside for Reggie Jackson here, and it is a revenge game for him as well if you want to factor that in. He should continue to play like around 30 minutes while Jamal Murray's out. But really, Jokic is the guy we definitely want to be playing from Denver. Don't mind Aaron Gordon or MPJ either, but their price tags feel about right. Let's move on to the next game, though, Minnesota and Golden State. So for Minnesota here, Anthony Edwards, he's coming in at 9,100. Anthony Edwards has been really, really good this season, shown a lot of fantasy upside, had a super high floor. Just, put up a really good game against this Golden State team last time they played, 53.5 DraftKings points in 38 minutes. He's playing a ton of minutes every night, and I think that only continues. So hard not to like Anthony Edwards. I think he's definitely in play on the slate. Cat, I'll probably pass on. Cat's been really underwhelming from a fantasy perspective this season. He's had some good games lately, but I'm not buying into it yet. I'll probably pass on Cat here. Rudy Gobert, don't think this is the best spot for Gobert. He did put up 39 DraftKings points, though, against Golden State last time they played. He did play 35 minutes. I do worry about this game, maybe like going small, but I mean, it seems like Minnesota is content just playing Gobert a ton of minutes as long as the game's competitive. So Gobert's fine at 7,200. He's one of those guys, though, that just doesn't have the highest ceiling. The floor on Gobert is really solid because, when he's out there, he's going to score, he's going to rebound, but the ceiling is not the highest just because he doesn't do much else besides score and rebound. And then like Mike Conley, I know he's projected well on some slates. I think this is a slate where you could see Conley kind of pop as like a value just because there isn't a ton of value right now. But Conley's just another one of these guys that just has no ceiling. You're hoping you get like 30 DraftKings points, and if you get 30 DraftKings points from Conley, you're probably going to be pretty happy. I don't mind him at 4,900, but if value opens up, he's someone that I definitely would be okay just kind of getting away from. That's really it from Minnesota. Nothing else stands out here. Now on the Golden State side, Steph Curry, this is questionable for today. This is some really big news we'll definitely have to monitor. Obviously, if Curry sits, that's going to benefit a ton of guys. That's going to benefit Clay. Don't know if it really helps Draymond, but it definitely helps Chris Paul a ton. Probably helps Wiggins as well. Chris Paul is going to be the biggest beneficiary if there is no Steph Curry. And at 6,100, I would have a lot of interest in Chris Paul here if Curry is out. Paul would have a big role. He'd be handling the ball a lot. His fantasy upside, his fantasy value would take a huge bump up if Curry sits. But if Curry plays, I don't like a ton from Golden State. I think Curry himself is always playable in GBPs. This matchup against Minnesota, I think, is fine. But at 10K, I think you're paying the premium for Curry right now. He's someone that I think is always playable. But for me, there's other guys I prefer today. Clay, I'll pass on. Draymond, I'll pass on. Chris Paul, I'll pass on unless Curry's out. Looney, you would think this is a spot where Looney should be needed going up against Gobert and Towns. But last time these teams played, Looney only got 19 minutes. So it's hard to feel super confident in Looney right now. And Wiggins just has shown no fantasy upside this year. He's been really underwhelming. I'm probably fine passing on Wiggins. Honestly, I don't like much from Golden State today. I think, you could always play Curry, but for me, he's just like a GBP dart throw. There's nothing that stands out on Golden State. But obviously, if Curry sits, that's going to change a lot. And, we kind of talked about who would benefit the most there. Now, moving on to the last game of the night, the Grizzlies and the Lakers. So looking at the Grizzlies today, only news to monitor here is Xavier Tillman, who's listed as questionable. With Xavier Tillman out lately, it's been Bismack Biyombo getting the starts at center. And Bismack's actually been pretty good from a fantasy perspective. 32, 23, 37, and 39 Draftkings points in the games he started. He's had a double-double in back-to-back games. He's been playing a lot of minutes. You would think in this matchup against Anthony Davis, they're going to need size out there. So I would think as long as Bismack avoids foul trouble, if he starts again, he probably gets like 30-plus minutes. Do I want to pay $6K for Bismack Biyombo? I don't think so, but I guess he'd be okay if Tillman's out. If Tillman plays, I think Tillman could be viable at 5,600. Obviously, that's assuming he starts and is not limited or anything. But if we're going to be looking to Memphis guys, we're definitely going to be focusing on Desmond Bane, Triple J, Marcus Smart. Bane, I think in this spot against the Lakers is totally fine. The only issue is that he is pretty expensive at 9K. I think there's some guys I'd rather play over Bane at that similar price tag. Like, I think I'd rather play Anthony Edwards over Bane. But Bane's fine. I have no issue going there. Triple J, 8,300 is always fine to play in GBPs. He does have a big upside. The only issue with Triple J is that there is also a big downside because he gets in foul trouble a lot. If he's going to be guarding Anthony Davis at all, that's obviously a massive foul trouble risk for Triple J. But the ceiling's there, and without John Morant, Triple J is going to have a big role. And then Marcus Smart, he's one of these guys that just doesn't have a huge ceiling, but he typically gives you a pretty solid floor. He's probably going to play mid to high 30s minutes, and at 6,200, he's a fine option. Not a guy that I would be rostering a ton in GBPs because I think his ceiling is not super high, but like in cash games, I think Smart's like always a fine cash game play, especially when his price tag is not as high as it has been. His price tag is kind of dropping, which makes him a little bit more appealing. But that's really it for Memphis. I do want to talk about Jacob Gilyard. So he has been starting lately, I assume. I don't know if he'll continue to start moving forward. We'll have to keep an eye on that. So I think he started the last 2 games, if I remember correctly, and he's been pretty solid in the games he has started. So if Jacob Gilyard starts, you could definitely go there. You could look to him for value. We'll have to keep an eye on their starting lineup, though. I think it was Zaire Williams. Yeah, Zaire Williams was the one that got moved to the bench. I was trying to think who got benched for Gilyard, and it was Zaire. So if they continue to start Gilyard, he is cheap, kind of at 4,500. He has been productive in the 2 starts he's started. So yeah, I did want to mention him as a value play for today. But let's talk about the Lakers now before we wrap up this video. So for the Lakers, we got monitor some news here. Anthony Davis is probable, but I believe LeBron is questionable. LeBron's questionable. LeBron did sit out their last game. I think LeBron sat out their last game just because it was a winnable game against Portland. I'd assume LeBron's going to be back for this game, especially since it's the in-season tournament is today. So I think the Lakers want to win this game, and I think LeBron wants to play this game. So I'm expecting LeBron to play. If LeBron is back, there's not a ton that stands out on the Lakers besides AD and LeBron. AD is pretty much always in play. He's always going to have a huge role, going to play huge minutes. His ceiling is obviously much higher if LeBron's out, and we saw that last game. 30 points, 13 rebounds, 6 assists, 62 Draftkings points. Last game without LeBron, he played 41 minutes. I would like AD quite a bit if LeBron's out today. If LeBron plays, though, probably fine passing on AD at this price tag. If LeBron is in, you could look to him at 9,800, but I think he's priced about right. Not a standout pay-up option today. And then the rest of these guys like Russell and Reeves and Rui, I think you're only considering these guys at their price tags if LeBron sits. If LeBron plays, I have no interest in really any of these other guys. So that'll do it for the Lakers. That'll do it for this 10-game slate for Tuesday night. Should be a fun one. I'm pretty sure the in-season tournament, it is tonight, or it is on Tuesday night, so these are all kind of some meaningful games. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Appreciate you watching. Make sure you guys hit that like button if you enjoyed. Hit that subscribe button if you have not yet. Also, be sure to go check out PrizePicks, sponsor of the video. You guys can sign up for PrizePicks, linked down below in the description. Or just when you sign up, use that promo code NOAH. You'll get your first deposit matched up to $100 when you sign up for PrizePicks with my promo code. But That's all that I got for tonight, guys. Good luck on the slate. We'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.